want to welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Daily Cheat Sheet. I have one request for Golan Ramraz, and that is on YouTube, you see us laughing, but you don't actually hear us laughing. I want to hear the laughter.
When your laughter does not interfere with the commentary, I leave it in. Otherwise, your face is plenty. You're so joyful that you moving your mouth with no sound is like most people guffawing.
I know, but the people that are listening don't. It's like we can't put in a laugh track. So I want them to know, wow, I found that awfully funny. It's worth the interruption.
I will consider it.
Please do. Thank you. Moving forward, I want to get to something that I find extremely interesting. And that is, this happened in the first term with Steve Bannon, where he overplayed his hand, thinking he had much more of an influence on the president getting elected. And it was a bad mistake he made, big mistake he made. And there's something extremely interesting going on, Golan. Trump's favorability's up, economy up, border up, domestic policy up. And yet the podcasters keep on getting louder and louder and complaining louder and louder. And it brings me to believe we don't know what influence they actually even had on the elections in the first place. Because if you go by if you go by the polls that were correct, Trump was up the whole time.
Well, we know that happens to be true. Anyone who looked at the polls saw what was going on. Anyone who believed Kamala had even a snowball's chance in hell was deluding themselves. And that's despite the press going buck wild over Kamala. It still didn't matter. He was up almost the entire time. And yeah, the podcasters were absolutely on the circuit. Trump went there, so did others, and they made sure that the bro with a microphone kind of vote was locked in. And, I will admit, Trump sitting down for 3 hours or whatever it was with Joe Rogan with no edits and no breaks to show that because of all the misinformation that had been out there about his confidence or the fact that he had no attention span or he couldn't hold a conversation for 2 minutes or that everything was being fed to him through an earpiece or any number of other propaganda pieces that were out there, that dispelled a lot of that really, really quickly. He was able to have a normal person conversation, veer from topic to topic in a very kind of smooth way, and even talk about everyday stuff like the fights that Joe loves to talk about. So I think that actually put him on really, really solid footing, especially when Kamala basically was too afraid to do it. Do I think it's the reason he won? No. Do I think that the podcast bros right now think that they are 100% the platform upon which Trump stands? Yeah, I think they do.
That's the answer I wanted to hear. And men, the reason I bring this up is because you've been such an accurate predictor with Trump. More than most I've ever met or encountered. I really have to give that to you. Ben Stein was 100% about the Ukraine war with them fighting back. He was the only person that predicted that. But you have been spot on in regards to tariffs and diplomacy. Second to none. Second to none. So I congratulate you on that 100%. And that's why Trump's up.
Yeah, I think his policies are great. Guys like Tucker and Bannon, all of them, their audience was going to vote for Trump no matter what. There was nobody else. In full disclosure, I was a DeSantis guy. I thought that after the way the media tarnished Trump from the J6 fiasco, I just didn't think he could come back from that. Not that I thought he did anything wrong with that, besides for telling people to march down there when there was nothing that they could do. But he did say peacefully, and he did all the right things. He wanted there to be National Guard troops on hand. The DC mayor declined that. All that said, I didn't think he had a pathway to be the president, and I was a DeSantis guy. What's that?
Who did?
Judah was the one who threw out those arguments where I was like, Trump is just too tainted. They've painted him into this thing where there's too many people in this country believe mainstream media, and they're just not going to vote for him no matter what. And Judah was saying, no way, he could do it. And I was like, I don't think so. I think DeSantis is the guy. If you want a guy that's going to win, it's going to be DeSantis. And it turned out that I was wrong on that one. But as far as his policies go, it's winning at every turn. This deal that we just did with the European Trade Union, right? On trade, the Europeans, it is a killer deal. We're getting 15% tariffs on all of their stuff. They buy billions of dollars of our stuff now. We're going to be continuously buying billions of dollars of their stuff. They're all going to step up. The U.S. was spending 70% on NATO. So 70% of the NATO budget, the NATO arms, the stuff that you need to actually fight a war. If there was a war that involved NATO, the US was spending 70% of that in a pool. If you looked at all the NATO nations, now they're all stepping up. In 2016, Trump told them, all the NATO nations, that they should be putting up 2.5% of GDP. The left went crazy and said, Trump's not going to defend our allies. And then Russia invaded Ukraine. And you know what they're spending now? Now they're all pledging 5% of GDP besides Spain. So they themselves have come around to realize that the guy was right and they need to do it. So I'm not the only one who gets it. A lot of people get it. His policies are just winning at every turn. It's amazing.
That's the key, by the way. That's the key. Is he won because voters were tired of being lied to, were tired of being lectured to, were tired of bad policies. The podcasters reflected that, but they didn't create it, right? And that's really important. They didn't get him elected in the same way that nobody gets someone elected other than they themselves doing it. Trump, in this particular case, was very outspoken, very clear. He was never mealy-mouthed about what he felt. He's been saying this stuff for a long time. To Men's point, he's been talking about tariffs for a long time. He's been talking about
40 years.
He's been talking about the UN for a long time. He's been talking about NATO for a long time. None of this is new. So we're talking about consistency and delivering. That's it.
Hold on. I'm bringing this up to you because there's obviously our favorite resource for the news, CNN, had this funny title, as Trump is getting these massive wins, as Men just said, just massive. I mean, they're all saying they got rolled. I mean, there in Europe, they're openly saying we got rolled. CNN says Epstein following Trump to Europe. My reply is no, the reporters are following Trump to Europe to ask him questions. It's not Epstein that's following Trump to Europe. And I just thought, as Trump's sitting there, all this stuff, he wins. Again, he wins. You're played, he's not.
If this is not a microcosm of everything that we have spoken about when it comes to the mainstream media, and especially the left-wing media, I don't know what is. You're telling me that as Men pointed out, he makes a deal that is so good that even the people who hate Trump say this is a political coup. That's from the articles. Even the people who hate Trump say France's dark day because they had no choice but to capitulate to this man. And while that's happening upon other wins and other wins and other wins, this is what they want to push. Epstein? I think CNN is just a podcaster with a bigger head. I don't even know what else to think when they are just pursuing the same nonsense narratives that only they are pushing. It's silly. That's not journalism. That's fan fiction with a press badge. And to me, we're wasting time.
It's amazing what this deal accomplished above and beyond everything else. When the Europeans bought into this Green New Deal thing, where they started shutting down their coal-fired plants, Germany shut down all of its nuclear plants. They hamstrung themselves where their solar and wind wasn't up to par, and they were wholly reliant on Russian energy. And then when the Russian pipeline got blown up and they needed energy, they turned to the US. So what they're doing with this trade deal, it's actually a bailout for Europe. Because if you look at their GDP, their stagnation compared to the US, we took off like a rocket. Our economy is booming. The European and Japanese markets are pretty much flatlined, and they need to sell goods here in the US. There was no world that they would ever continue to operate where they couldn't sell us their goods. Trump knew that, and he used that as a leverage point to get them to capitulate on everything. They're going to invest $600 billion in US companies here, businesses here. They are going to buy $150 billion, I believe it was, of our goods. So this is all fantastic.
And $750 billion in U.S. energy. Specifically, it's to wean them off of the authoritarian oil, because as we've all been going through this Ukraine-Russia war, Europe keeps buying gas from Russia.
They're funding the war.
Financing the war.
Again, though, at the end of Trump's first term, we were for the first time in ages, we were supplying energy and oil, but in mass compared to, I don't know the last time that it actually happened that we were the biggest energy exporter. But I want to move on a little bit, though, because Trump The thing is, and Men brings this up a lot, which is he knows how to pivot, right? So what seems that, and people still can't get used to this, the chaos, what they perceive as chaotic, right? So he throws 10 things out and they perceive it as chaos. In Trump's mind, it's perfect sense. And at a certain point, people have to just say, guy knows what he's doing. It makes sense in his head, but that refusal, that acknowledgement will never happen. Reason I'm bringing this up is because, in regards to social media, Golan, Gutfeld brought this up years ago. We'd all be speaking German. I'll take it even a step further. We'd all be speaking Russian if we had lost the Korean War and social media was around. Trump understands the world stage better than any president. I don't believe it. I believe in any lifetime. And in 10 or 12 days, he's going to supply Ukraine with arms paid for again by NATO. And you're going to have the same crackpot saying he doesn't know what he's doing. What are they doing? You're going to have the left calling him this and these crazies over here calling him that. And it's just him being Trump, knowing what he's doing.
100%. And not only that, he will continue every time you think you're settling in to whatever the quote unquote news cycle is, whether it's the Ukraine thing you're talking about, whether it's the deal that was just made in the EU, whether it's US futures are up, whether it's the markets being reassured, who knows whatever it is, whether it's Gaza or Ukraine or any number of other things, the next one will be immediately coming behind it. Because if there's one thing, and Trump has said this out loud, if there's one thing he knows, he doesn't have a second term. He also doesn't know whether there's going to be another Republican in the White House after he's gone. He also knows that 2 years in, when things start to shift, he's going to lose the House, something just because of the inevitability of it. Look, it may not happen. We'll see. This is a time when things shift and power shifts. So he is going at a breakneck pace. So one of the reasons why it's going so fast is because he knows he has a limited amount of time to get things done. The other reason it's going so fast is because he has noticed something about the press. He has learned the press better than they know themselves, which is the minute he says, here is a policy, and he lets it just sit there for a while for them to scrutinize, all the flies buzz on top of it and they sit on it and sit on it and sit on it and ruin it. And like what they're trying to do with this Epstein thing, like other things are moving on. They're like, no, remember Epstein, guys? Guys? It's too late. He's already on to the next. So he doesn't even give an opportunity for them to start scrutinizing and lying, frankly, about what just happened, because the next one's already coming and they don't have an opportunity to get a foothold. It's a brilliant strategy.
And Mend, I bring up the point of pivot because you're the one that constantly uses that word, which is such a phenomenal word when it comes to Trump, which most people don't have the ability to do. And I also brought up this point because of this fake photo of this Gazan child who is seen, supposedly he's suffering from starvation, but we know it's a lie. It's been proved to be a lie, but the lie has been spread. And we're witnessing aid trucks today in Gaza being attacked by Gazans or Hamas. We have no idea who it is. So this starvation narrative is all BS too. And the reason I bring that up with Russia and this and that, I want to know if Americans would have been okay with feeding the Viet Cong, the Koreans, the Nazis. Of course not. This idea is ludicrous, to feed your enemy. And this is what Israel has to face, man.
It's beyond ludicrous. What's ludicrous is that mainstream media runs with the Hamas narrative. There wouldn't be you can't have a famine that only attacks children. That's just not the case. Anytime there's ever been a famine,
Great point.
It didn't just attack the kids. So why are all the adults obese? And then they pull out some kid with the muscular dystrophy or some other autoimmune disease, and they say his name is Mohammed Al-Maktoka, and he is 18 months old, and he's starving in Gaza. That's the headline from NPR. CNN did the same thing. All of the mainstream media, this is where it's like blatantly falling apart, is their narrative that they're running with from Hamas, fed straight from Hamas, the ones that are the only ones that will gain by the elimination of the Gaza Health Foundation, GHF, is if the food goes back through the UN, which then gets funneled right into Hamas, then they get to sell it to the Palestinians at exorbitant prices, and they fund their war machine. That's the simple thing. The UN has been invited by GHF to work beside them, alongside them, and distribute aid. They refuse. So Israel's just letting trucks in and let people just run and grab whatever they want. Either way, getting food straight to the Gazans is the best way to get around Hamas. So whether it's GHF delivering it straight to the Gazans, or if it's Israel just letting trucks roll in there, or the UN roll in there and everybody just attacks those trucks, fine. Who cares? Get the food in there, let those people eat, bring them all to a safe zone, and then kill all the bad guys. We've been saying this from day one. They need to do this. They need to do it hopefully quickly. They should. The longer this drags on, the worse the PR war goes for the Israelis. They're never going to win because there's a bunch of liars and complicit organizations like CNN and NPR and all that will go along with those lies. So you can't rely on the truth getting out. The truth doesn't get out. By the time it gets out, it's on page 7 in a little op-ed that says, sorry, we made a mistake. That kid really was.
At
Even
best.
in the CNN piece, when they did it, they actually mentioned that kid had muscular dystrophy or whatever, autoimmune or
cerebral palsy and hypoxemia.
Cerebral palsy, right. So even as they did that, it didn't matter because they got to use the kid's picture in the front page on the headline, and nobody reads the full article. All they see is starvation, Gaza, picture of a baby starving. Okay, that's all I need to know. Fuck Israel.
True. And, I believe that Newsweek wrote an article about that same kid where they interviewed the family, and the family said he was happy and he was mobile and he had therapy and he had nutrition was going well. And his brother, who is in some of the photos, but not the ones printed in the New York Times.
They actually cropped him out.
They cropped him out and
the brother out. The original picture has both of them with the mother, and then they cropped the healthy brother out so that they could just show the mother who's not so obese and the sickly looking child.
And they chose that particular one instead of the other kid with cerebral palsy because that one had a real fat mother, and it would have been looked a little weird, I think, on the New York Times cover.
And then there's the third one. And the third one is the kid that they're still using his picture, but he was actually, Israel facilitated his evacuation to, I believe, Italy, where he's undergone treatment, and he's doing a lot better. And it wasn't for starvation. It was muscular dystrophy.
That's right. Of course. And so, by the way, I'm just going to point out, before I say the next thing, I'm just going to point out that if a million kids, as they like to tell me, are starving, why do you have to use pictures of kids with pre-existing medical conditions? Why don't you just show me pictures of the starving kids? I'm not trying to be indelicate here, but if every picture you show me is a kid with cerebral palsy or muscular dystrophy or hypoxemia or who knows what, maybe you don't have any pictures of starving kids. I'm just saying.
Go on. Before you get to your next point, just to finish that up, and show the pictures of the fat Gazans in the tunnels eating.
Yeah, there is.
There's zero contrast. Go on to your point. There's a bunch of fat Hamas soldiers or whatever sitting in tunnels eating food, not giving a crap about the people on the outside of the tunnels.
For the sake of accuracy, that particular video, which is going all over the internet, is a year old, and those terrorists are dead. But it doesn't change the fact that those terrorists stole the food, the aid that was coming through, took it down to the tunnels, and ate it while smiling into a camera.
I love how that got fact-checked so quickly. I love that in the community notes.
By the way, you know who fact-checked me on that? A bunch of Jews, because Jews love to have ethical debates, while Jew haters, all in lockstep, post the same lie over and over and over again. So congratulations, all the Jews who love to show me how moral they are. We're going to win the argument and lose our lives.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you as you were about to make another amazing point.
The other amazing point is something I may have mentioned before, but 40% of the people in Gaza marry, have sex with, and give birth to children with their cousins.
First cousin.
Your first cousins. And by the way, hey, do what you got to do, but then don't come to me when all your kids are deformed, and certainly don't pretend it's because you didn't get enough aid.
Well, I don't think it's a matter of doing what you have to do. I mean, this is who they are. And this is what we keep on talking about with the fact that the Enlightenment period, flew over that many parts of that region, and they don't act in a human sort of way. This is what people don't grasp. They look at them as people. I get it. They're people, yes, but we're not all built the same.
Yeah, look, there's an old saying in the South: if she isn't good enough for her family, why would she be good enough for someone else's families? They are all marrying their first. They're all marrying their first cousins. When they do get divorced, they are still cousins.
If they're lucky, I mean, for all we know, it's their sisters. I mean, look, after 9/11 massacre, who the hell knows with them? The levels of depravity with the Gazans and the Hamas knows no bounds.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. What we're talking about is, I at one point I used to say animalistic society, but that's not fair. That's not fair. Animals know better. And I would say this is a monstrous society. This is an inhuman society. Now, you say they're human. I believe you because they look like humans, but they certainly don't. You said people, excuse me. Then you know what? To me, the fact that they look like people, the fact they walk on two legs sometimes, that doesn't make them human. That doesn't make them anything that exists in any kind of society, in any kind of civilization. This is just barbarity. It's like cavemen, except even worse, because there's a deliberate and malicious nature to what they're doing. Them starving their own people, them stealing the aid that comes in and starving their own people in order for fools on the internet and idiots in the woke side of the equation to look at the world. Oh, look at how poor these kids are starving, killing their own people. We know for a fact the number of times Israel told people, leave areas because we're going to have a war here. And Hamas either forced people to stay there or convinced people to stay there. They want dead bodies. They want starving bodies. They want malnourished bodies. That's how they win. And what we're doing is we are designing a playbook for all future bad actors. Want to win? Kill your own kids. Want to win? Starve your own people. Because that's how France, and pay off France, and that's how France is going to make sure they go ahead and announce we want a Palestinian state.
Mend, I have an honest question for you, and great points, Golan. Why are we the only people that are actually willing to talk like this? People on the left have zero issues, as we witnessed with that podcast last week of blaming the Jews for the Holocaust and so much worse. And an Israeli had his ear bitten off yesterday. Where was it? In France, by somebody screaming about Hamas. Why are we the only people actually willing to say what we're talking about when everybody knows this to be the truth? There's certain truths in our society that nobody ever wants to touch. Nobody wants to touch the inner cities in Chicago and the mass killings that go on there every single weekend. And nobody wants to touch the brutality that is in this region and the animals and monsters they are. And we're called Islamophobia or whatever you want to call us when we're just speaking the truth. They're actually telling lies.
One is, as we said many times, there is no such thing as Islamophobia. It's a rational fear. It's a very rational fear. It's not to say all Muslims are bad, but blah, blah, blah. There's a high percentage that are insane. To his credit, Charlie Kirk did a piece today where he debunked the Gaza starvation claims. He just went through it, showed how it's all BS. One of the kids.
But Judah's not talking about that. Judah's talking about the fact that we call out these people for being barbarians, right? Is that what you're talking about, Judah?
Yes.
Yeah.
But go on. I think the Charlie Kirk piece is actually very interesting that he was willing to do that. I think that takes a lot of guts.
Yeah, one of the pictures that they're using that's going around is of this kid, Osama al-Rokab. It went viral. It got crazy amounts of engagement, and he has a genetic illness, and he's actually been airlifted. This is the kid that was airlifted to Italy, and he's doing great. But that picture goes around. There was another picture of a little girl with blonde hair and a mom over her, and they both have a bucket or something out, and they're crying and screaming and pleading, begging. And the caption was, young girl begging for food in Gaza, July 26, 2025. In reality, this thing got 700,000 views and 13,000 likes. It's a Yazidi girl from Iraq fleeing ISIS in 2014. So again, back to what Golan said before, and Judah, you said it too, is like, there is a lot of genuine suffering in Gaza. Why do you need to play it up? What is that all about? Because they know that that's what gets the Westerners to get their panties in a bunch. The normal, average, expected level of carnage that you would see in a war, which they are experiencing, isn't enough. They try to, what Golan said before, do the Holocaust thing. They're trying to recreate a Holocaust because they think that's how they're going to get enough sympathy to permanently kill all the Israelis. That's what they want to do.
Yeah, and to be clear, what Men's talking about is there was a podcast not long ago called Call Me Back, and they had some guests on, and they were talking about the fact that right now, all this manufacturing of famine, manufacturing of genocide, all this false bullshit that they're spewing on a regular basis is designed specifically to emulate what the Jews had. They had a Holocaust against them, and therefore there was enough sympathy to give them a state. That's how they see it. And so they want a Holocaust of their own. So they can say there was a genocide against us, starvation against us. So now we should have a state. And if you look at the history of Palestine, quote unquote Palestine, the state of Israel, we don't say the country of Israel, we say the state of Israel. They say the state of Palestine. Everything that they do, and you can go down, the list is too long to go down, but they have emulated every aspect of our life. It is envy and greed and theft from top to bottom. And this is just the latest. We want to steal your narrative from the Holocaust, from World War II, and use it to try and steal ourselves a state. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And by the way, men, to your point, you mentioned the one photo today. There's photos from Yemen. There's photos from Lebanon. There's photos from Syria. There's photos from years ago in Gaza that they're using today. And every time I see a deformed little boy, and every time I see a picture from Lebanon, I just ask myself the same question. If you had real photos happening right now on the ground, wouldn't you be showing me those? It just makes me question the whole thing. Also, the fact that they lie about every single thing they ever say also makes me question what they're saying right now.
That is exactly it. That is exactly it. Isn't there enough real famine and real pain and suffering going on there? Why don't you just go with that? Why do you need a manufacturer? And it's because they're trying to get that absolute sympathy. How do you get a place where the terrorists claim that 150 people died of famine to get more attention than, say, the Congo or Somalia or any of these other places where thousands of people are dying from famine? How do you do that? This is how you do it. They have a great
notice,
playbook.
by the way, that in those places where a famine is widespread, adults are also skinnier. Do you notice that they're not taking pictures of their kids eating dirt? Literally, this is a trend, by the way, in Gaza. Videotaping your kids eating dirt, putting a plate of dirt with a spoon in front of a kid, and then uploading it to the internet. That's not happening in places where real famine is happening. This is all performative. This is all bullshit. And if you're buying it, you either are too stupid to know better, or you don't want to know better. Because at this point, with the number of lies that have come out of their mouths, if you're still believing any of it, it's on you as much as it is on them.
Mand, I'll let you finish up the point.
Yeah, it's absolutely telling. One is, we've said this, it's only the kids. It's never the parents. The parents, for some reason, are all obese. The pictures are stolen from Yemen and from Iraq and from Syria. You could show what's going on in Gaza, and I think a lot of people would have sympathy for the so-called innocent people there. There would be a lot of people opening up their hearts to that. But when you show a kid with some sort of genetic disorder and he looks like he's literally starving to death, that gets people just the emotional reaction on that. Charlie called it something like visual terrorism or something. It's just a visual, emotional terrorism.
Well, it's hybrid warfare. It's really hybrid warfare. But I want to move on, though, because, Golan, I sent something to you, which you will help me with edit later. But it goes to this. So when you look at the people in faux MAGA who are against Iran, who are against Iran, right? They've been against, obviously, they're the same Epstein people. And as I brought up the Ukraine thing, but there's always a through line with all these people. And that's, listen, the reality is we've had 40 years, 50 years of horrific foreign policy decisions, really just devastating foreign policy decisions. And Trump is here, and Trump has made every right move as far as foreign policy. I can't think of a bad move that he's made foreign policy wise. And I didn't mean to bring Epstein up in that, but I'm saying as far as his foreign policy goes, I just wanted to say Epstein for the clicks. At what point is it not about what he's doing and there's a deeper issue that's rooted with what he's doing? And yes, I am referring to Israel thing. When it all comes back to Israel, when it all comes back to what he's doing in that region. And I can't help but think that these people that question his foreign policy, if it's going so well, what's your malfunction?
Well, you know what the malfunction is. I mean, we can pretend like we can have a conversation, pretend let's try and suss it out. We can figure it out. But we know very quickly. Let's just use Tucker as the example, since Tucker is at the epicenter of Fit Heel Nation. And this is a guy who hates Israel, hates the Jews, has been very open about it, loves talking about AIPAC, loves talking about Epstein, loves talking about anything that could make the Jews look bad, loves talking about how much money we've sent to Israel, loves talking about all of the stuff, of course, never references how much money other countries are spending or how much money we're sending to other countries or how much money Israel is spending in it in America. None of that. It's just one direction, and it is to vilify the Jews and the Jewish state. So we know this. And it's the same thing that has fueled everything that he's done, from supporting Russia to supporting Iran to being against Israel and everything in between. The idea that this guy gets on stage at TPUSA and uses his time to just basically give a Heil Hitler speech for half an hour while people are walking out, mind you, is not America first. This is someone who has been supporting the number one state sponsor of terrorism in the world. This is someone who has been sponsoring a bad actor attacking its neighbors and making sure that he is attacking the allies of the United States. And the reason he's doing it is at its base level, Jew hatred. When you look at Candace Owens, same thing. When you look at Myron Gaines, this is something that Men sent me. The guy, I don't know what he goes by. He's some Muslim name, bullshit, made up this name, Myron Gaines. He's the guy who hosts the Fresh and Fit podcast. And he had a little discussion group last week where he was talking about how Hitler was great and all the dumb girls on his thing were like, yeah, we should kill the Jews. And he was laughing. But then Canary Mission put together a video that Men sent me. He's been doing this for years. He's literally throwing up the Heil Hitler hand. He's saying Hitler's misunderstood. He's saying the Jews control everything. Can't wait to kill all the Jews, and on and on and on. This guy's anti-Semitism is beyond anything you can imagine. So how does this happen? Everything that he says starts and ends from that place. All of these guys, the exact same thing.
And that guy's still on YouTube. He's still on YouTube. If you said anything about the vaccination or whatever, election denial, anything, you
Cutting
said anything,
boys' dicks off, the whole thing.
You want to go full on Hitler Nazi youth camp? No problem.
No problem.
YouTube loves you.
Yeah, not only YouTube loves you, YouTube pushes you, and then you have my favorite clip of the weekend is going as the Piers Morgan thing. You know, as he's blaming he's like, what's going on here? I can't fake an English. Right? I can't fake an English accent of that video, but you exactly, you douchebag, what this is all coming from. You and the Tim Pools and all these other people, you're the ones.
Here's the deal, is that if you don't know what is going on, if you don't know enough about a region or you don't know what's going on, shut up. Just stay out of it. Stay silent. Just keep it to yourself. Learn. Go out and explore, learn, whatever. But if you're going to start pontificating, you're going to start having guests on. You're going to pretend like you're a mediator without knowing what's going on. And let's use the Theo Von thing. Goes, I feel like it's a genocide. And JD comes back at him and goes, it's not something that you get to feel. There's a clear definition. Are there more people or less people? Are they trying to annihilate them? Did they start the war? Can they end the war? I mean, these are all things that, like, you bring that up, it is or it isn't. So
look, bottom line is Piers Morgan, of all effing people, is the host of the offenders in the first place. It's not the victim. This is hypocrisy on a platter. The idea that he's going to pretend to be shocked as he kisses Dan Bilzerian's ass and massages Candace Owens' shoulders and brings over Chunky Uyghur to talk about all the quote unquote fakey genocide. This is a guy who has platformed more anti-Semites than David Duke, and he's going to pretend right now that he is shocked that someone said something like this.
I think you mispronounced his name. It's Sweaty Chunky Uyghur.
Excuse me. It's the French pronunciation. Forgive me.
I just have to bring up something because Men brought this up last week. So before I forget, I was watching the Billy Dole documentary on HBO. And again, they could have easily have cut this out because it's been debunked and proven to be a lie. But, there was a time when he was wearing a yellow star on stage. And the reason he did that was because, and he gets angry in the video, and I'm the biggest Billy Joel fan there is. Okay. So this was hurtful for somebody like me. So, man, he's sharing about Charlottesville, and all Trump had to do was denounce the neo-Nazis or call them out. And I'm like, well, that is what he did, Billy Joel. And that HBO didn't edit that or cut that out. If I were Trump, I would sue HBO. At a certain point, you are continually spreading slander in this case, right? That would be slander, go on, since it's visual. You're completely... And it's Billy Joel. What are you doing? Just cut it out of the damn thing. It was 4 hours long. I could live without 2 minutes of it.
It's one of those things where sometimes if you leave it in, it's even better because it just shows how out of touch some of these guys are. They have no idea what they're talking about.
Great song, Out of Touch with the River. Anyways, go on.
It's
New York
like
State of Mind.
Mandy Patinkin coming out with his nonsense, and you don't know what you're talking about. Just shut up. Stay out of it. I have friends that don't know enough about the Middle East, and they have giant social media platforms, and people have asked them to say something. And they said, I just don't know enough to say anything. And that is the proper take. Listen, right? I like
that you brought up Mandy Patinkin because nobody knows who he is, but he's from The Princess Bride and the most famous line, my name is Inigo. You
killed my father, prepared to die.
And it's what's funny is he's known as one of the most miserable people in this town.
Absolutely. This is a guy who got kicked off Criminal Minds. Every day on Homeland, my friends who were on that show complained about what a dour asshole he is. And he's always been a self-hating Jew. So this is no surprise. Sorry, Judah, continue.
No, I was just going to say what was interesting is that a friend, an acquaintance of mine had a heart attack and Mandy was there. And I said, we were talking for a minute or two, and I said to him, okay, I just have to say it. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father, prepare to die. And I got the most positive reaction, and he could not have been nicer. And maybe he was on his meds that day.
Wait a minute. This is actually important because I've met him, and I actually took a class that he taught. And he started his set before the curtain opened by saying, my name is Inigo Montoya, the whole thing. He knows who he is, and he knows the whole thing. And then the curtain opened, then he did a bunch of singing, and it was really wonderful. The guy is a great actor, okay? And as a human being, like if you just have a conversation with him, he's not like, Sterling Gray. He's not just angry at everybody all the time. But if that's a reference no one's going to get, it doesn't matter. But Mandy is someone who, when it comes to work, when it comes to him constantly being miserable on set, he doesn't like acting. He is always talking about despair. He's always talking about democracy is dead. He's always talking about how everyone's a racist. He's always talking about how fascism is behind every bush. He just he has all he does is feel things. But unfortunately, he lives in his mind in a Greek tragedy. So constantly, all he feels is the most negative thing in the world. And if you ever want to have a conversation with him that isn't just chatting, like if you ever want to get into like moral clarity, buckle up because it's going to get dark.
No, I know. Believe me, from other experiences with different people, I know you're right. But it also goes to show you mental illness. There's a lot of this mental illness that the left has. And I do believe a lot of it has to do with what you often bring up with is a lack of spirituality and a lack of God. And when you see people like John Cusack, who's a known alcoholic, coming out and saying the craziest, most wild shit in the world, it's pure mental illness. I hate using that word and lumping it in with people that are really mental, but these people are in severe need of treatment. This is beyond Trump derangement syndrome, man.
Listen, anti-Semitism in general is a mental illness. If you are picking on one group and blaming them for all of life's ills, that's a mental illness. The biggest thing of that is that it never helps those that are doing it. So if you're an anti-Semite and you're blaming Jews or racist, whatever it is, you're picking one group of people and you're blaming them, that'll never help you in your station of life. It might make you feel a little validated if someone agrees with you. You meet them, they agree with you. Now there's two racists walking down the street together and echo chambering it, but they'll never get uplifted. They will never get ahead in life. That doesn't get you ahead in life. So it is a form of mental illness. And you see it like with like you said, John Cusack, or that other woman I used to have.
Susan Sarandon.
Susan Sarandon had a big.
Patton Oswalt had posted something so bad one time that I was about to post. I'll say it out loud. I wanted to repost at him. There's a reason your wife died. She just wanted to get away from you. But the difference is I'm not as sick and twisted that I would post that online, although I did just say that out loud. But that was the thought I had at the time. Golan, I paused. And I pause when agitated. When you have a mental illness or you have that thing and you can't pause. So, yeah, go
100%. My mother is a psychotherapist, okay? And something she taught me many years ago when I was a little...
Sorry.
My mother is a psychotherapist. And she taught me something many years ago when I was a young, impressionable child. I was a fat little kid, and I was sometimes unhappy, and sometimes I would get mad. And she would say, write the letter to the person you're mad at. Write it and make it hurt. Put everything on the page. And then I would write it. This is before the internet, this is before computer. This is like me writing with a pencil on a piece of paper. When it was over, she would take it out back, and she would give me a match, and she would say, now light it on fire. And that's it. I didn't feel angry anymore afterwards. And the difference between that and sending the letter is gargantuan. Now, it's so easy to just hit send or just hit enter, just hit post now that it's hard. But it's that mental illness. And it is, even in minor doses, minor incremental doses, the idea of writing something so insane and vitriolic on the internet, or a friend of mine just received a message from someone that they've known for years, that they've worked with, that they were friends with, that they posted. My friend posted something to the effect of, I'm actually afraid for my community with all the rise in anti-Semitism. And the response they got from this supposed longtime friend and coworker was, well, you should be afraid because Jews are Nazis and you all should be ashamed. It was like the fact that you could type that and then not go, got it out of my system, time to delete this obviously insane statement that indicates mental illness. You put send and thought, I'm the righteous one. That shows that there's something wrong with you.
100%. I just want to tell a story because I wrote this, but we're going to close up shop soon. But I wrote years ago, I written this article because this happened to me, because I was trying to think to myself, what is happening with the tweets and everything being so hostile and nobody pausing. And growing up, my father, who worked at Time Life or Time Warner, Time AOL, so we'd always get the magazines at home. And I loved Sports Illustrated, and I loved the back. It was, in the beginning, there was always like every week, it was like 4 different writers would get the backstory of, like, it was sports, but being a metaphor for life oftentimes. And Rick Riley, who I loved, staunch lefty, but I loved him. I didn't know that as a kid. And my father's like, well, why don't you write him a letter? I'll just put it in. And not into the magazine. He didn't have that power, but he'll, sort of streamline it. And so I was like, oh, that's a great idea. And then in my head, man, I was like, well, I got to write this letter. That means I need a pen or a pencil and a paper. Then I got to correct it. Then I got to fix it up. Then I got to give it to my father. And that, by the time that thought process ended, I was like, I'm not writing this letter.
And that was a positive thing.
Right. That was a positive thing. But I went through the whole scenario in my head in 10 seconds, and I realized that letter is never being sent out. But
I went through a very similar thing. My mom had me do that, had me write the letter. My mom's also a therapist. Write the letter. Then she took it. She read it. She gave it back to me. She said, rewrite it. I rewrote it and then gave it back to her. Another day passes, reads it, gives it back to me and says, write it again. What would you change? And we must have done this 7 or 8 times. And by the time the 8th time came around, all the sting was gone, all the anger was gone. And then you're left with the facts and you realize the person that you were mad at, you just don't want to have anything to do with them. It becomes more of that where it's like, I'm not emotionally charged. Now it's more rationally like, you're not a good person. I'm going to stay away from you.
And that's the whole point, though, in the 4th step in Alcoholics Anonymous is, you write down your resentments. And the whole point is finding out what your part in the deal is. And I heard a person say years ago, it's one of the most brilliant things is, if a resentment can't start with you, it can't end with you. And it can't end with you, you're dead. And it was one of the most profound things I had ever heard. And what's your part? That's what nobody ever wants to look at with resentments is what's your part. And because it's pain. Yeah, go on.
No, I was just pointing, I agree with you absolutely. And I think men, to your point, so my mother had a similar thing where she would have me write it and light it on fire. But then we would talk about it if I still felt like there was anything going on. And one of the things I would discover after getting it all out of my system, like vomiting it onto the page and then lighting it on fire, was that mostly I was mad about a specific thing that really wasn't that big a deal. And if it was that big a deal, then it was something that I could either go have an honest conversation about, or I could decide that person's not a good person and I could just avoid. But it helped me crystallize what it
Yes.
was. And I
Yeah,
think
and it was a really
that's what
good
was so
exercise.
helpful. Yeah.
I love that exercise. Just you're mad about something, whatever it is, write it down. Don't send it. That's
Well,
the main thing.
it's one of the things I love about what we do when we post our content. It's really positive content, and we get some amazing content feedback. And I absolutely love that is the lack of negativity. Yeah, we talk about negative things, but we don't do it in a hateful, spiteful way. But I just have to end it with saying, you guys, what's so funny is you guys' mother, you guys actually wrote. So, when you go away to camp as a kid, you're always supposed to send your parents a letter. I never would write a letter or send it, and finally my mother started giving me envelopes, pre-stamped envelopes saying, just put something in. And even that I wouldn't do. So you guys are far better kids than I was. And I would come home and she's like, hand her back the envelope with the pre-made stamp and the address on it. But I've got some good news for Dems and some bad news for Dems. The good news is you have favorability. The bad news is it's at its lowest since 1990. That's 35 years. Way to go, Dems. I want to thank everybody that's been helping spread and share this show. I want to just give you a heads up. This is going to be our least edited show. So quirks, mistakes, you will hear them all in this episode. But seriously, thank you for all the support. Thank you for making us top notch in news and commentary in Indonesia and America and every other country. But we're in Indonesia, and as Men pointed out, a very Muslim country. So we are doing some.
We're also huge in the Philippines. So a huge salamat po to all our Filipino friends. Thank you, guys.
And let's not forget, top 200 in America, top 150 in America. That's extremely important, but also Australia, other places. Keep rocking and rolling. Owe a lot of that to you people on Truth. So thank you. Humble. Thank you. And don't forget to write a review, leave a review, give us that 5 stars, whether it's Spotify or Apple. Follow us on Substack at The Daily Cheat Sheet, YouTube at The Daily Cheat Sheet, Instagram at The Daily Cheat Sheet, X at TD Cheat Sheet, and of course, Truth Social, where you could find us posting the night away. And it's a lot of fun, and go on. We both do it and we interact, and because people are important. And I truly believe to the day I die, content matters. I choose content, not clickbait. And I think President Trump is very similar. Go on. I think he chooses.
Yeah, you and President Trump, kindred spirits. And I would say content matters and the people matter. That's why we love when you give your comments. We love when you engage with us. I know sometimes my posts are awfully long, and a lot of you are actually reading that stuff. I commend you.
Long. You use it, men, just so you're not familiar with this, on Truth, you could literally write like 2,000 characters. I believe it's 2,000 characters, which is a hell of a lot of characters. Go on, gets there.
First drafts are usually double that.
Yeah, he's like 4,000 word essays, but they're brilliant. And so are listen, I got to thank the Demon. And, I know that's not his real name, so I'm not breaking his anonymity. That guy could write. So could David. I mean, we're talking about and quite a few other people are exceptional writers. And so thank you from the bottom of our hearts. I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world, wherever you are. And God bless you all.